Amazing news. I have a microphone now. Thank you very, very much to my best friend for sending me this, and also to everybody who has tuned in to earlier videos and dealt with the shoddy audio quality as I'm getting started. This is the first technical upgrade we get to make for the channel, which is very exciting. Today's video is a video that was requested in the comment section of my Lizzie Bennet Diaries video. So I am listening when I say let me know what you'd like to hear about. I do have a list going so far. You can find it on my latest community page post, but if you have more suggestions or requests, this was a really fun project to do, so I'd love to do that with more pieces as well. So Wayward Guide for the Untrained Eye is another web series, and it's actually an example of a Kickstarter where the money that was promised went where it was actually supposed to, which was to the production of a web series and its accompanying podcast. The principal photography for the web series was done in like 2017 and 2018, so there was a long time of post-production, and I think they really used that to their advantage in some ways that I'm really excited to talk about. In fact, I am so excited to talk about Wayward Guide for the Untrained Eye that this, like my Lizzie Bennet Diaries video, I'm splitting into two parts. This part will be about the show and the podcast, but I also have an idea that I'm wanting to spend a little bit more time percolating on because I am 99% certain that I can turn this into a homebrew for Monster of the Week, which is my favorite tabletop role-playing game, and I've been wondering how to make a video about Monster of the Week, so that seems like a good move to me. Let me know if you're interested in that or in other videos about tabletop role-playing games. I actually only have experience with Monster of the Week, but I don't think I'm getting a lot of Boss Baby vibes from this to say that this is like perfect for a Monster of the Week campaign. Our main characters are Artemis and Paul Shoehorn, and they are fraternal twins and podcast producers. They are excited to have the chance to pitch their project for the next season of the Wayward Guide for the Untrained Eye podcast, which exists in the fiction of the universe. There is a prologue to the podcast that sets up the fact that we know Artemis is hosting this podcast. They do get the pitch that they're making in the first episode of the show approved and greenlit, and a lot of what happens in the show is sort of this tension between what actually happened and what is being cleaned up in the narrative that's presented to the general public. And that cleaning up of the narrative is really fun to watch, especially because at first it doesn't seem like that's what they're doing. Paul is very upfront about the fact that there's a werewolf hook in this story, and since it's set, I mean, with the exception of werewolves existing, but, you know, this podcast network, American podcasting network that they work for, all of this is set in a very realistic, grounded world. This isn't somewhere where werewolves are already well known. You know, that's kind of standard for any big monster movie, right? So we're not operating in a world where werewolves already exist, and the hosts of this podcast that seems to be fairly normal and well produced are mentioning it as a possibility that Artemis shoots down repeatedly. I'm really fascinated by what a different story you could get if you watched just the show or if you only listened to the podcast. I can't imagine how excited I would be if I had discovered the podcast first and then found out that there was a whole accompanying web series. The web series is really, really good. I've listened to a handful of narrative or fiction podcasts. I liked the first couple of seasons of Welcome to Night Vale, and then a lot of it happened and I got years and years behind. I'm also a fan of Within the Wires, which is actually from the same podcasting network as Welcome to Night Vale. It was a storyline that was buried within podcast episodes that were supposed to sound like something else. I remember one of them was the guides to a museum, and then actually there was a plotline playing out. That was really fun. So this already, as just the audio prologue, was hitting the same notes as a fun fiction podcast, and I was getting really excited about it. And then I jumped over into the first live action episode and I was completely blown away. This is not something that I was expecting to look like a movie. I mean, honestly, I really loved it so much that I stopped watching it in the middle of it so that my best friend could watch with me when they got home from work, and they said the same thing. They were really surprised and impressed by the production quality. Something else that I'm really surprised by is the fact that Sean Astin is here. So let's actually talk about the cast for a second. If you watched my video about the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, you'll already recognize Mary-Kate Wiles because she played Lydia, my favorite character in the adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. And her stage sister is also in this. Ashley Clements has a role, and so does Ashley Clements' husband. So does Mary-Kate Wiles' husband, for that matter. I mean, I first saw the actor playing Paul in bonus content that I found for Frankenstein MD, which seems to be somewhat lost media. PBS took down the Frankenstein MD episodes from YouTube, apparently, after Bernie Sue sold it without permission. I want to study into that a little bit more. But I have to reread Frankenstein to do that because I haven't read it since I was like 15 and I've been wanting to read it anyway, so that one's gonna take me a little bit. It's not just web series people that we see that we recognize though, because Sean Astin is here. He plays the boss. He's also in a couple of the podcast episodes, but primarily he pops up at the beginning and the end of the 10-episode live action arc. It's just fun to see Sean Astin. Honestly, everybody is like at 100% the whole time. This show is so much fun to watch. Somebody who's maybe a little bit less surprising than Sean Astin when you consider his roots with Star Kid is Darren Criss.
I think I'm really about to blow your gosh darn mind. I'm Ryan Reynolds.
He plays a character named Ryan Reynolds, which I find just delightful. Like, Ryan Reynolds is such a just some guy name that using it and playing into the oh no not the actor thing, brilliant. I love it. It's genuinely very funny. Also genuinely very funny, Joanna's delivery of Burt Reynolds was my father. I love this show. I already want to watch it again. Someone just came into the parking lot, but it's fine. So the series follows Artemis and Paul as they go to follow their lead from the not famous Ryan Reynolds to investigate what's going on in a small town called Connor Creek.
My story has it all. Corruption, politics, big business, little business, sticking it to the man. Well, I tell you, I'm working myself up just thinking about it, and this is just the tip of the iceberg.
I don't
love
think
it.
so.
As a piece of world building, I am obsessed with Connor Creek.
Connor Creek is perfectly normal. Or is it?
It is so much fun. All of the people who live in Connor Creek are very fun, and again, everyone is acting, just having the time of their life, it feels like, or at least it's the time of my life. Connor Creek is described as being in California, which makes the accent choices given by the residents extra funny and enjoyable.
No, of course, of course.
Love you so much. I think we have more important things to focus on.
And there is a secret conspiracy happening that involves werewolves and power and a mining corporation. It includes wanting to keep the town open while people are dying. It is a piece of commentary that I think had to have been so refined during the post-production process in 2020. Also, just in terms of how much the podcast escalates the storytelling that's done in the live-action medium. I already liked Artemis and Paul as twins, but listening to the podcast and getting that many extra hours of runtime of getting to have them bounce off of each other and banter and have a dynamic really makes it easy to buy into the sibling relationship. You have to worry so much about the economy of time with that kind of thing when you're telling a story in a movie or a TV show, which is why you always get like, hey sis, hey bro. But this had space to breathe and to make that dynamic feel really believable and fun. Another thing I really love about this dynamic is that you really get the sense that Artemis is putting on a podcast persona, a radio personality voice, and Paul is pretty much the same while he's filming and while he's not. Paul is kind of goofy and bumbly, and he's very, very fun. I love him. I'm pretty sure he's gay. I don't know if that was intentionally written into the storyline, but that's the coolest name I've ever heard. Do you want to be best friends? They're gay. Those bitches gay. Good for them. Good for them. My best friend and I watched this in a night, kind of an extended stretch of time. I would maybe say that this is a 2-night endeavor if you're not a double feature length kind of person. I know that when they did a drive-in premiere during the pandemic, they played the first 4 episodes. I cannot recommend it enough, which is another reason that I wanted to split off this video and talk about how I would adapt it into Monster of the Week, just for a chance to talk about it more, because I don't want to spoil the surprise of the show and the fun of watching the storyline play out. So definitely check it out. There's a playlist linked in the description where someone has put the podcast episodes and the show episodes in order, or like I said, you could definitely do one first and then the other, and then come back and let me know what that experience is like. I have said before, when I was talking about my hesitations with Pemberley Digital as a corporation and what it did to the passion behind the people who worked on projects like the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, Sucking It Out, I'm really excited to dive further into what the Tin Can Brothers have done, because it seems like a lot of what I really want in my web entertainment, which is creative and original stories being made by people who really love telling those stories. At the time of me recording this, they've just recently finished a Kickstarter for fundraising for their 2024 season. As far as I could tell, there are not currently plans for a season 2 of Wayward Guide, but there are some things that I think were hinting towards a second season at the end here, as we saw Artemis leaning into this paranormal investigator role. So I am hopeful that that's something that they will come back to, maybe especially if more and more people continue to get into it, as it's been out for a while. But wow, I love this show. It scratches the same itch in my brain as, say, Wynonna Earp, which is why I made that little 10-minute video last week about not wanting a Wynonna Earp movie. But it also does a lot of the same things as Only Murders in the Building, which is another show that takes the true crime podcasting format and turns it into a driving motivation for the characters. I'm actually really into Only Murders in the Building, but this show made me so sad that there's not a tie-in podcast with Only Murders in the Building. That Only Murders in the Building isn't actually in conversation enough with the podcasting format to have even really thought about that. Wayward Guide does also predate Only Murders in the Building, in addition to doing a lot of things better. I mean, they're different enough that I wouldn't call Only Murders a ripoff. I don't know if anybody involved in Only Murders knew about Wayward Guide. I didn't until a week ago, but if you've watched Only Murders in the Building and you wanted a little bit more, and also you like fun, campy, supernatural shows, go watch Wayward Guide. You will love it. It is a very fun way to spend a night. I love the sibling dynamic between Artemis and Paul, and I also love the idea of looking down at your beautiful newborn twin babies and naming one of them Artemis and one of them Paul. But, you know, maybe I am just too hard on the name Paul, because there are a couple of characters in one of my favorite books, and they decided to take the name Paul when they could have chosen anything. Can't think about that for too long or I'll get sad. Have any of y'all read The Locked Tomb? Are you interested in videos about that? That's a trick question, because I really want to make one either way, but tuck it in the pocket. So this was kind of an appetizer to give you time to watch Wayward Guide and kind of know what I'm talking about in my next video, because my next video I'm going to be explaining the mechanics and some of the backstory of my own personal Monster of the Week game, which is a tabletop role-playing game written by Michael Sands that I have homebrewed to near unrecognizability, but that I completely love, and that I think that a lot of people who are intimidated by all of the math required for Dungeons and Dragons would also love. If you like shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Teen Wolf, Supernatural, stuff like that, Monster of the Week was literally written for you. And this campaign that I'm putting together to talk about in this next video is also written for you if you think Wayward Guide sounds like fun and you want to play it out. I'm gonna go work on that. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for recommending Wayward Guide to me. I am so appreciative. I love it. So go watch Wayward Guide. It's really good. Bye.